Today we're going to be talking about the bandsaw, and this is a bandsaw. And what it is, it's one continuous blade that goes up and around. The motor's down here and it drives it, continually running through. So if you open this up, you can see the band comes in here. And this freewheel spins around, and it's got a tire on there that keeps the blade in the track. You can raise and lower. This is the guard. It comes up, comes down. It's got two guides in here on the side to stop the blade from fishtailing as we cut. We want it to cut nice and straight. And then it's got a bumper guard in the back. There's nothing protecting it when you try and pull on the blade this way. So if you get into a cut and you need to try and back out of it, you can easily pull this whole blade off, and then it'll ruin the blade and make a pretty terrible noise. So we want to plan everything in a forward motion when we're cutting on this thing. On-off switch is right here. There's a light up here to kind of help you see what you're doing. And then this is all hooked up to the dust collection system. There's a hose that goes out the bottom, goes to the whole room dust collection. So we want to make sure that's running, and that'll keep a lot of the sawdust falling down and take care of it for us. So there's really three different types of cuts we can do on a bandsaw, and one is we can do a straight line cut. So if I wanted to remove this, we just take a nice straight line cut right there, and I could adjust the width of this board. It's not going to be as straight as, say, a table saw would be, but you can still get a nice straight line. We can also do curves. So if we want to do curved lines, we can do those as well, because the blade's fairly thin front to back, and you can get in there and you can move it side to side and go around. If you're doing a really tight radius, so you're coming in, you want to do a really tight turn like that, what we're going to do is we're going to cut relief cuts that radiate out from that line. So you're going to go in, you're going to do an in and out cut to cut all these relief cuts. And then what happens there is you get in, your blade actually has tension on it, it's twisting a little bit. When it hits that relief cut, this whole piece falls out, and it relieves all the tension on that blade. So it just makes for a much easier radius cut. So we can do straight, we can do curves, and the other thing we can do is called resawing. And we resaw when we want to get veneers that are matching on both sides, so we can book match something. So we open up a piece of wood, and the left side and the right side are nearly identical. So when we do a resaw, what we're going to do is we're going to split it this way, and we're going to run it down the blade, so the blade's running all the way through and gets through to do that. This is the adjustable fence we're going to use. So the first cut I'm going to do, once I get set up to do the cut, is we'll just do a small rip cut, and we'll rip down this grain and remove a section of this. Then we'll turn it on its side, we'll do a resaw, and then I'll do a curved cut to finish that up. Okay, before I do anything, I want to make sure I have my safety gear with me. So the first thing I'm going to do is put on my respirator, then my hearing protection, then my glasses. Then I'm going to turn on the dust collector, and then once I do that, then we'll get set up to cut. So what I did is I set the fence to the width of the cut that I want, and now I've adjusted the height of the guard to make sure that it's 1/4 of an inch above my workpiece. If it's much higher than that, it's too easy to get my fingers in there. Now when I'm working this closely to a blade, I might want to use a push stick to get my wood through there so I don't get my fingers in there. So I'm going to go grab some push sticks. So you can see a really nice smooth cut. It's a good line. There's nothing wrong with that. It's good. Next thing I'm going to do is set up for that resaw. So I'm going to set it up this way. We're going to hit the middle of this, and we're going to decrease the dimensions by half here. So the blades come to a complete stop. I'm going to raise this up. Bring this in. Now usually a resaw is a little bit more difficult of a cut because it's cutting through so much material here. But this saw is pretty powerful and it can handle it. So I'm going to line this up. I'm just going to eyeball half. If I really want it to be in half, I would go in there and measure it. Okay, that looks good. Okay. Now we have two pieces. So when we open it up, these grains should be mirrored on each side so they look identical. We then run that through a planer or a sander to get it nice and flat, but basically what we did is we just took that piece and cut it in half. Now the last thing we're going to do on this, we're going to cut some arcs and squiggles on it. So move all this out of the way. And then again, I'm going to drop this down so it's a 1/4 inch above. Right there. Just going like this. And then in here, it's going to be a little bit tight. So I'm going to go ahead and cut some relief lines right here. Because these are straight lines, I can go in and out on these because I'm just going straight in and straight back out to make my relief cuts. we go. So we always want to make sure that the tools come to a complete stop before we get in here and try and clean everything up. This one slows down pretty quickly, but I have an older bandsaw in here that could take a couple minutes for it to come to a complete stop. So if it's still spinning away in there and you go stick your fingers in there to try and clean something out, you definitely can get cut, which you don't want to do. So I'll just take my scraps that I can pick up out of here. The rest of these I'm just going to sweep out. Raise this up. Sawdust. Keep cleaning the whole time. Turn the light off. Put the guard back down. And then we're good to go for the next cut. If you have something like this wooden dowel that you want to cut, which is just a round rod of wood, if you go to put it in the bandsaw, when the blade hits it, it's going to want to spin it. And it can spin it and shoot it off across the room. So what we generally do when we have a rod like this, we use something called a V-block. And the V-block is just a bigger piece of wood that has a V cut into it, and the wood fits right in there. And what you do is now you've doubled the surface area and surface contact. So instead of one point of contact, which it would have on the table, you now have two. And you also have a good way to push down and hold it and stop it from spinning. So if we're cutting dowels like this, we're going to set up maybe a track miter gauge and get it going so we can do multiple cuts. But it's going to give you a much better grip on this and stop it from spinning out. So make sure you have a V-block if you're cutting wooden dowels. So one huge point of safety when it comes to saws, and all saws are in this category, not just the bandsaw, but it's easy to explain on the bandsaw, is you never want to have your fingers in line with the blade as you're pushing a piece of wood. So if I'm pushing my wood like this and my thumbs are in the way, if something happens and it gives or slips, my thumbs are going to go straight into the blade. So usually when I'm pushing a piece of wood, I want to be out here guiding it so I have nothing in line with that blade. And that goes for the table saw, the miter saw, the bandsaw, the jigsaw, like any major saw we're going to use that has a blade on it, you never want to have your thumb or fingers directly lined up with that blade. So make sure you keep them kind of to the side and you're controlling your work, steering it from the outside.